everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're sitting down with my friend Stuart Semple. Stuart is an artist whose work I have grown to love, his art, and I think, as you'll see, his overall approach to life and the joy he brings is a huge inspiration to me. He's written a great book called Make Art or Die Trying, the only art book you'll ever need if you want to make art and change the world. And so, Stuart, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for making time for me.
Hi, nice to be here.
So, I would love to begin by hearing maybe some of the details of the story behind this book, because you talk very
Mm.
early on about how you found yourself in a hospital bed
Hmm.
and you say that you were dead but conscious and then aware enough to decide to come back. And that makes all sorts of questions appear in my
Where do you
brain right off
start
the
with
bat.
that?
So maybe take us into that story if you could, and the impact specifically it's made on your life and your art, and then
Mhm.
obviously this book.
Yeah, so let's start with the actual story. So
Mhm.
I'm a university student. I'm in my first year and I'm studying fine art at the time, away from home in
Mhm.
the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, actually. And I come back to visit my mum for a holiday and I bought a sandwich from a motorway service station and I was allergic to it.
Mhm.
So my lips started swelling up, my throat started swelling up. I didn't know what was going on. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, but we thought it'd be quicker for me to get to a hospital if I got on the train. But we didn't have enough money for both of us to get on the train.
Mhm.
So I traveled alone, basically choking to death on this train. I
Wow.
flopped on my mum's doorstep. They rushed me to hospital. Long story short, all the normal stuff they used to treat an allergy
Mhm.
just didn't work.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a case of if I was going to go, it was kind of when. So my family came in, I said goodbye to them and everything. It's deeply sort of traumatic as a teenager to be going through something like this.
Mhm.
Then a doctor came around at about 2 in the morning and they put a drip on me, a drip of plasma from another hospital in the hope it would do something. I don't know what their theory was, but it felt like I was allergic to it. My whole body just came out in hives and I flatlined and I had an experience, I suppose,
Mhm.
in that moment, and we can talk about that in more detail if you want.
Mhm.
But really, the key thing was if I felt like I had a decision that I didn't have to end there, but I could have done, and
Mhm.
it was a beautiful state to be in.
Mhm.
It was lovely. I can see why people would want to do it, but the strange thing was that I had this art thing, and I thought if I live, I'll make art. So in that moment, this is going to sound a bit weird, but I feel like I made a deal with God. Not that I really believe in that necessarily,
Mhm.
but with divinity at least. I
Mhm.
made a deal with something bigger than me
Mhm.
that if I got to live, I would spend my days making art.
Wow.
So I kind of had that bargain. So I kind of needed to keep up my end of the deal because obviously I did live and I
Yeah.
recovered and everything
Mm.
else.
Wow. Now, when you were in that experience, did you, and I know like, people who have had those experiences sometimes struggle to even put words on it, but like, did you have a sense that you were still in your body? Were you kind of looking over your body? Did you feel peace? Did you feel any like anxiety? Like what was going on in
Mm.
your in whatever
Yeah,
state that
so
was?
it's really weird. Like I've read a lot of these near-death
Hmm.
experience out of body stuff, and there's no visual on it in
Yeah.
my experience. So I'm not looking down at my body and seeing doctors or nurses. It's not like that.
Mm.
But there is a sort of yes, there's a peacefulness, a sort of bliss, you could say, and then like this sense of kind of oneness with everything and
Mm.
becoming less and less individual and more one with something very, very beautiful.
Wow.
So the closest thing I found to this is like people saying they've seen the light.
Hmm.
I've seen the light, like it's sort of like that, but you're kind of merging with that.
Interesting. So I realize now this might be a weird question because I know I want to talk to you obviously about art in a minute in your book, but
Yeah,
and
of
I
course.
realize you're not a theologian or expert on the afterlife, but I don't know if you have
No.
any thoughts to share. But I'm curious, like, did that experience impact your belief system at all concerning specifically the afterlife? Like when you grew up, did you grow up with a certain set of ideals that you were given or a certain belief system? And like, did this experience change that, or was
Mm.
this just kind of part of the journey as did it kind of fit in kind of where you already were in terms of understanding the afterlife?
Um, no, it completely changed that. So
Mm,
I was brought up in quite dogmatic Catholicism.
mm,
And actually, I rejected it. I couldn't get on board with it. It looked like hocus pocus to me. I couldn't understand it.
mm,
Um, but that experience just gave me a sense that there was so much more to what we're experiencing than we are actually experiencing, that there's something more than this, something greater than this. Maybe we're not what we think we are, or there's something else. So I suppose what it did was it gave me a taste of what I would call spirituality, and
yeah.
a sense that that was worth pursuing or getting to know or understand. So what it did was it just gave me loads of questions,
Mm,
because I didn't believe in that. But I
yeah.
tasted something that was very real. So what was it? What on earth am I going to do now I've done it? What's happening here? So it sort of, yeah, massive questions came out of that.
Isn't that interesting too that like, because I mean, I grew up in a very dogmatic world, very, we knew what we believed. We had all the answers, as a very conservative Christian evangelical world. And
Mm,
now I'm in this place where I'm just embracing all of these questions and like the answer I don't know is much more comfortable with me than it used to be. And I feel like that has opened up my faith, so to speak, and my spirituality and just given me an entirely different perspective on my whole life. And I feel like
mm,
everything has gotten intensely deeper since I got to that place than it was when I was younger. So I'm kind of
mm.
in this
But
similar place as you, I would say.
yeah, I mean, the not knowing and the not sureness is actually what fuels all of it. I mean, skepticism's the point, because you're like,
Mhm.
but what was it? What happened? And that's what drives these kind of searches. If
Yeah,
we already knew, we wouldn't bother looking.
that's right. That's right. All right, so let's get into your book a little bit.
Oh,
You say that early on in the book, you say that everyone is an artist, and you have this
mm,
quote here that I just want to read for our listeners. You say, "I don't care if you grew up, if you've been to art school, if you have a day job, if you're in your teens, if you're in your 90s, being an artist is possible for you right now." So, talk to me a little bit about that because I know a lot of people who would insist that, I'm not an artist. I don't have an ounce of creativity or artistry in my
well,
in my bones. If I try to draw something, it's a stick figure, whatever. But what does it mean for everybody to be an artist? Because I feel like that's such a freeing statement.
well, there's a couple of things here. I mean, one, you're living proof that
Hmm.
what I've just said is real, because
Hmm.
art hit you later on,
Hmm.
or revisited you, perhaps.
Yeah.
So what do I mean? You know, you can ballet dance, not very well,
Hmm.
probably.
Nope.
Do you know what? I can play every single musical instrument in the world.
Really?
Yeah, awfully. I can
Hopefully.
pick up anything. I don't know what
I
I'm
love it.
doing, but I can do it, right? You give me
Yep,
a
it's
guitar,
true.
I'll make it do something,
We can make an
right?
incredible band, you and I.
Absolutely. So I didn't say everyone will be as good as Picasso,
Yeah.
if you think he's any good. What I did say is everyone is an artist and can make art. What do I mean? What I mean is we have an innate need within us as human beings to express ourselves. We have
Mhm.
emotions, we have thoughts, and we are living an experience. Since our ancient ancestors, we've articulated that experience to the people around us. The way we've done that is through art, whether that's drumming, drawing, speaking, dancing, making, stacking objects. And we've been doing that since day dot.
Mhm.
And that's why we are, you know, different to other species on the planet, in my opinion, is that we have this mechanism of expressing how we think and how we feel. And I
Mhm.
think that's just a very human thing. Now, how well we are at doing it, how good we do it is arguable, and you can get better at anything with practice. Of course,
Mhm.
that's a given in my mind. So yeah, I think everyone has the potential to do that, and I think we're all making creative decisions all the time. I think when we set the barometer of it being art so high that only the Picassos of this world, or only the Duchamps or whatever, are valid, then we have a terrible tragedy, because what we do is we stop people expressing themselves. Like, you as a kid were told, it's just not good enough, and you stop doing it.
Mhm.
What? Does it matter if it's any good? What if you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
What if someone else did? What if you needed to do it?
Yeah, there's this guy I've been following a lot of artists on Instagram now that I've gotten back into art. And so one of the
Mm,
people that keeps coming up in my feed is this guy who I guess he's an artist, but he critiques everybody's work. And so I guess people will send him DMs of like different things they've come across, and like, is this really art? And there's this one guy who I think is pretty cool. Like he has this big studio and he hangs from like the ceiling on a chain. And he's got these buckets of really colorful paint.
mm,
And he has holes, I guess, in the bottom. And he's swirling around, holding these huge containers of paint. And it's making these beautiful designs on
mm,
the canvas, and then he's done different like smearing of it and stuff like that. And the finished product is like mind blowing. But he critiques this person and says like basically like it's garbage and it's like you know, it's just like a stunt, like a publicity thing to get views, and he can go and sell it for all this money. But in my mind, I'm like, man, like I feel like that's what I was told when I was a kid, that I was trying my best to create something and I was told that it was really stupid and not really good enough. And I felt like it just killed my creativity. And I feel like why do we want to go around killing people's creativity? Like if they're doing something that brings them joy, if swinging from the ceiling with paint gives this guy joy, then let's just let the guy
Let
do
him
it and have a
be.
blast, right? Let him do its thing. Who cares if they're hurting you?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what's the deal? Like, we've all got different things. I'm sure you like different music to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe, you're wearing a Green Day top. I like Green Day. We agree on that. But maybe you don't like Scott Walker, and
Mm,
that's okay because it's totally subjective.
yeah,
You know, who are these custodians of taste and these
yeah.
arbiters of like what's good and what's
The
not?
gatekeepers.
Yeah, yeah. What? Who died and gave them the position? It's just crazy.
Yeah,
Let the guy be. I might not like his swinging around drippy paintings, but someone does. That's
yep.
all right.
That's right. And he likes it, right?
Oh, that's it. Like, let him be. He's happy. He's not causing any trouble,
That's
is
it.
he?
So how does somebody go about like unlocking that spark? Because you talk about in the book how everybody's got, a
Mm,
spark of creativity inside of them. Like I think back on my own journey and I told you like how that spark was like snuffed out or it was covered. Like how do people go about reactivating or rediscovering that
mm,
spark of creativity, whatever it might lead them to, whether it's painting or drawing or music or whatever. Like
mm.
think of people who are buried by the responsibilities of their life. They're just trying to make it through the day and, pay the bills or, they've been critiqued and stuff in the past. Like how do you find that spark and then begin to fan it into flame?
Well, I think there's lots of ways, and I mean, obviously, I go into some methods in the book of
Hmm.
of kind of how to do that. But the I believe that you can enter a kind of creative state.
Hmm.
There's a state where creativity likes to happen, a sort of sweet spot, and I'm of the belief, not everyone agrees with me, that sort of creativity happens to you and through you, not because of you.
Hmm.
When it's your problem, when you make it all about you, oh, Stuart has to come up with a big creative idea. That's a lot of pressure. And in that environment, creativity doesn't really like to live. It kind of hides from that.
Hmm.
And when Stuart makes it Stuart's job to be creative and good, Stuart has what Stuart's mum said, what Stuart's school teacher said, what I believe, my embarrassment, any shame, any things in the part, all the rest of it. So
All
if
the
Stuart
voices.
gets out all the voices, so if Stuart gets out of the way of Stuart and just lets what needs to come, the more I do that, the more seems to bubble up. And the more I just trust that that's going to do something interesting, the better it seems to get.
Mm,
And that's my experience of it. So trusting the process. So that could be, simple things. Take a sheet of paper every day. Just write a full page of paper. And the artist way, she talks about daily pages, a practice of writing 3 pages every day. Just to start tapping into that process. It could be it's very easy. Draw for 5 minutes every day, anything, and then promise yourself you can screw it up and put it in the waste paper bin afterwards. Never show anybody, ever.
mm,
Why? It doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to mean anything. But you're an artist. You're making something every day. Most people around you don't draw every day. Now things start to shift. Now you've got an identity. I'm a maker. I draw every day. I'm a drawer.
Yeah.
You just start doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I think I have a daughter, she's 7, and she loves to draw, and color and stuff. And I think for me, like since I started doing my art again, in the beginning I felt like very much that perfectionism was there. It's got to be perfect, because that's what again I was told growing up. It's got, everything's got to be perfect. It's got to look good, and all these different things. And then I see her do stuff, and it's like she just does it, and it
Mm.
brings her so much joy. And like it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, last night I have this thing over here that she made me. Where is it? Here it is. The podcast logo
Oh,
that I have,
wow.
and she took her time drawing it and everything, and she was trying to spell everything right, and she's like, "Oh,
Super cool.
I spelt it wrong." She's like, "But that's okay," and she gave it to me. It is like it just makes me realize like how everything we make doesn't have to be perfect, and I think there's so much freedom in that if you can flex that muscle in your creative world, you can then
Mm.
flex that muscle in other areas of your life too, because not everything
Mm.
that we do has to be perfect. And I think there's so much freedom in that.
And I think perfection's kind of overrated. It's
Mm,
quite boring. There is beauty in the defects. There's
yeah,
humanity in them. There's honesty in them.
yeah.
You know.
That's so good. So you talk in the book about different types of art, which I thought was
Mm.
really interesting because when I first got the book, I thought like, it's gonna be a book about all of Stuart's paintings. That's just what I thought. This is what I assumed it was gonna be because I just had this
Yeah, it's
storyline in
not.
my head, right? It's not that at all. And you talk
No.
about all these different types of art and different ways to create.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that you talk about in the book and that you share, it's like the art is almost like an experience where the person who's viewing the art gets to have an experience with the art. In some cases, even be invited into the process of creating this piece, which I thought was so profound. And so I was wondering if you could just share with our listeners a few of the different types of art you're tackling in this book, and maybe some of
Yeah.
your own favorite pieces that you've created that fall into those different categories.
Yeah, for sure. So we speak about happenings, Bauhaus, activism, performance art, and the reason why I'm going through them is because these have been such elite things. A lot of people feel excluded from talking about those. I don't understand them. They sound very high arty, very wafty. I can't join in. So I want to demystify them because I think there's useful things in all of those.
Mhm.
And I actually do believe they've been kept away from people, actually. Just the understanding of it. It's actually not hard to get your head around at all if you've
Mhm.
got someone who can explain it. And things that I've done, I mean, I think one of them was the emotional baggage drop I installed in Denver in Union Station there, where two strangers would come together in a booth and would have eye contact, and one of them would tell the other one an emotional burden they were carrying, and they would exchange that. I mean, that's quite a radical idea, but that's kind of performance art. It's participatory. It's definitely activism because I'm doing something towards mental health, and the
Yeah.
idea if we communicate that could help.
Mm.
And it's kind of a happening. I love the idea of happenings, like things that if you experience them, if you were there, you were there, and if you
Yeah.
weren't there, you missed it.
Yeah.
These kind of spontaneous moments that can erupt. And I've done quite a few of these, and I'm
Mm.
planning another one for March, which is called the World Peace Train, in which I'm hoping people will join hands and play the OJ's song Love Train on their mobile phones.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
hoping loads of people will get together and do that. Cost nothing, moment of connection. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's been loads. There's been
Hmm.
loads.
When you do these things, do you need to get permission from like local authority, like local um like communities? I think you have the one thing where you hung up like all these different balloons, did all these different things. Like I'm wondering like is there anything that you've done where you haven't asked for permission from someplace and you've gotten scolded or is that like not a
Well,
thing?
I mean, no, I mean it's a huge part of it. Like sometimes to, what looks simple is a load of bureaucratic red tape and permission and stuff. You can't just put an emotional baggage drop inside a massive train station in Denver. Like, you need permission from the transit authority and
Mm,
sign off and health and safety. So we do go through all of that, and that's a big job. There's a lot of
mm,
admin on that.
mm,
But other ones, at least in the early days, were a lot more sort of punk ass than that. Like
mm,
the Happy Clouds that I let off from Tate Modern is a case in point. So I realised that in the UK, you could protest as long as you told the police you were going to do it and let them know what you were doing. So I said I was going to protest doom and gloom, and I was going to release these eco smiley face clouds from the South Bank into the sky. And because I told the Metropolitan Police me and three others would be down there with a box protesting doom and gloom, I actually got a permit for the protest, which
mm,
meant no one could move me on. There's nothing they could do about it.
mm,
So that was quite interesting. But to make that one happen, just to even get that box down there, I had to find someone I could park the van outside the house, who ended up being the Bishop of St. Paul's Cathedral, I think, or Southwark Cathedral. So I had to give him some money for the roof.
mm,
So 100 quid, then we could park the van in front of his house, which means we could get, so it's all that sort of thing. There's all this
yeah.
sort of trying to make things happenness about it all. No, I haven't got in trouble for anything.
How long, like in advance, do you plan something like that? Like the doom and gloom protest, for instance. Like, is that something that
Like, that
you?
was literally like a couple of weeks. I was just
Mm,
really like, I need to do this. I need to, that's this overwhelming, like, I need to make this thing happen and just put whatever means necessary, just do this thing.
yeah, I've been thinking of something like as I was reading your book and I came across that idea, like my mind was going in all sorts of directions because I mean in the US it's doom and gloom right now. I mean it's we have
Mm.
just had the election and everybody's fighting and everybody's upset about something and now we have the fires over
Yeah.
in California and just so many things are happening in this country and I just noticed that like everybody's feeling like they're carrying some kind of a burden. So when I was reading your book, I was thinking, man, what would it look like to do something punkish and radical, to really bring a smile, invite
Mm.
some color into the world and just, have a bit of lightness. And so I was trying to think of something similar, like along those lines of what I could do in my little community here. So my
Mm.
wheels are turning.
Good. Yeah, we need it. We need it more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
we do.
I feel for you over there. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
it's a
know.
lot.
It's a lot, and it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better, which is really scary. But we need artists, we need visionaries, we need people stepping up and
That's right. That's
doing the
right.
work.
That's right.
You know,
So on that note, you talk in the book about how art and creativity, people accessing the spark, has the ability to change the world. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just the meaning behind that kind of a statement, because I feel like a lot of people think world change has to come through these big, things that we do. But like, if you think of people who are creative in their own way, can bring change to the world, what does that look like? What does that mean for you?
I mean, I really believe it. So I'm not just saying it. I actually really, really, really believe it.
Mm,
And I think everything starts with an idea, and the world is changed by one person having an idea, and history's told us that.
yeah.
And you know, small things ripple in ways that we don't even understand. And I totally think that we have the power to present an idea or something creative to our neighbor, to our community, to our family, to think of things a little bit differently. And I do think that shifts stuff. And it sounds a bit bizarre, but I do think through the process of human beings creating at a time where so many people are destroying,
Mm,
and in a considerate way where we're thinking about others, I think it's the most generous act we could be doing. And I think it's direct.
mm,
I think it's the most direct form of action. Like, an idea, creative idea applied changes society. And, there's too much music and too much art that has happened to prove that I'm absolutely right in this.
yeah.
It always comes from culture, and culture changes through the creators that put things into culture.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, when I started doing art again, I didn't, I would post pictures once in a while, stuff I was doing, and somebody said to me, "Oh man, I'd love to hang one of your pieces in my house." And I was like, Really? Like that's weird.
Wow.
I thought in my mind, I'm like, who would ever want to hang this in their house? But I loved like when I was a kid, I loved drawing cartoons. And I remember in art class in junior high, we did a segment on pop art, and
Mm,
looked at people like Peter Max, and I was so like obsessed with the color, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was like, what if you could merge the cartoon world with the pop art world and do something fun with that, And I was having so much fun that like I said, I put it all away, but I picked that back up again, when
good.
I started painting. And then I discovered that like so many people were saying like when I look at your cartoons, it reminds me of my childhood and the cartoons that I used to love when I was a kid. And so then people started giving me like, could you do, like The Simpsons for me, or could you do, Bugs Bunny for me or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, So and I noticed that like people were feeling something when they came across the stuff I was making. And I felt like, man, like I feel like that's a small little difference that I could make in my world is people who are feeling heavy, feeling the
Mm.
baggage of their lives, tapping into that inner child and, awakening to the joy that they used to have. And if someone wants to hang that in their house or their office, like how cool is that? And then, some people wanted to give me money and some people didn't have any money. So you don't have to give me any money at all. Like I'll just send it to you, like it
Yeah,
just became the whole idea of just creating
beautiful.
something to bring joy for somebody. And I felt like that was my small contribution to making a change in the world. So,
Yeah, but that's a huge thing. I mean, I can see it in the one behind you. You've got that yellow submarine Peter Max thing, but it feels new, and and that's lovely because that it's weird. Paintings are weird. They
yeah,
exist out of time,
yeah,
and they're portals. They really are. Like your work is taking people straight back to the memory, the associations. There's nostalgia in there. It's a better time. It's escapism in a way from where
hmm
they are.
hmm
It's like a window into somewhere else. And what a beautiful thing to be able to do for people.
that's right.
Like that's hugely important.
That's right.
How
That's
is
right.
how is being a banker any better than that?
Mhm.
It's not.
Thank you. Inner critic. Talk to me about
Mm.
that. You talked before about getting out of the way of Stuart and all the different voices that could be in your head. But I hear that a lot from people is, and it's not just with art, like it's with everything. Like I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Like, what does it look like for the inner critic to pop up in your mind on a regular basis? And how have you learned to kind of deal with that or befriend that person or whatever
Mm.
you might want to say?
Well, there's a couple of things about it. It's important to have a bit of a rudder on the ship.
Mm,
You can't just, otherwise you just become a megalomaniac and you think everything you're making's brilliant. So of course it's not. Um, so I prefer to assume this position of I just don't really know. There's so many things I've made that I thought were rubbish that I look back on later and I think, oh, there's actually something in it. Um, so I try to sort of depersonalize it, you know, but we all have doubts. We all procrastinate. We're scared of doing this stuff. But really, if we try and stay curious and try and have fun in the process and make it feel more like play,
mm,
then if it feels playful and we're kind of enjoying it, that tends to be the critic doesn't seem to like to hang out there.
yeah.
The kids in the playground who are messing around, like your daughter or whatever, with her friends. I don't think that, oh, should I go and I don't think it's kind of present in play. So I think play and curiosity is the shortcut out of the inner critic.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's important to stay critical of what you're doing and to reflect on the work. Maybe after you've done it,
hmm
to take a step back and have a look.
It's good to have a time of almost like a debrief time with yourself to kind of look at what you've done,
Yeah,
look at what you've made, and see
yeah,
how,
and
you could make tweaks to it next time or, yeah.
absolutely. Like it's all learning, and what could I do better next time? And there's no harm in showing it to people you trust and love as well. If you
Yeah.
if you feel too close to it and you just don't know, because
Sure.
you get to a point where the internal voices are just so confusing
hmm
that especially after I'm a bit older now, all these years, I don't know anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the voices get so chattery inside, I could just end up doing nothing because there's so many voices going on and there's so many things I'm thinking that it's easier just to kind of put it all away and just not do anything at all. And that's not obviously always the best either. Funny thing, the other day I was making a had this great idea for a painting, and I went to the store and I got this bright can of neon spray paint, and I taped off my
Oh yeah.
canvas, and I did the background was going to be a sky, and it was going to be bright pink, and it looked really good. I took the tape off, started adding the other colors, and it started to look red once I mixed lines to put like the other colors on the canvas. The pink started to look more red
Hmm.
to the eye, so it looked like the sky was like bloody. And I was like trying to fix it, and I was trying to do add different things to it, and I was like, I hate this. This is stupid. And I was so angry because I had this great idea and it wasn't working. And so I put it away aside, and my daughter came down. She's like, "Oh, can I see what you've made?" I'm like, "Oh, it's over there. It's I've made a lot of mistakes on it." And she goes, "Oh, I really like this." I'm like, "Oh." She can I hang it in my playroom? I'm like, "Oh, I gotta think of myself. I gotta look at my horrible painting in her playroom." And so I said, "Yeah, so let me finish it, and I'll give it to you." And then I decided, what can I do to this to make it like serve some kind of point for her. And I started to add, like, I smeared some paint on there, started to do some drips from the top over the landscape. Then I wrote on it, mistakes are okay. And things
Wow.
that we try to teach her, like, it's like mistakes are okay, then an arrow to I am loved, another arrow to I am smart, then back to mistakes are okay. And then she saw it, she's like, oh wow. And I said, and I explained it to her. I'm like, when we make this painting was a giant mistake. I said it wasn't anything like I planned it to be. I said, but you loved it, and it came out to be really, really cool. And I said, so our mistakes don't mean that we're not loved anymore. Our mistakes don't mean that we're dumb or that we're stupid or we're not smart. Mistakes are okay. Mistakes can actually end up being a really beautiful thing. And so now it serves a purpose on her wall in her playroom where she can
Wow.
look at that and she can see it. So that was a really good reminder to me because I was really close to throwing it out or just putting some stuff over it and starting it again. But it came out to be something really beautiful. So
It's
thankfully I didn't listen to the
incredible.
critic. Yeah.
Yeah, and you learn a lot through it. I mean, this is the thing. It's a great teacher when we get out of the way and we,
Hmm.
we carry on,
That's right.
even in territory we don't expect to be in, right? You ended up where you didn't start out.
That's right. That's right.
And it's incredible.
Hmm. Thank you. So what's your advice? I have a few people who I know who listen to the podcast who have their own art, whether it's painting. Some people are work with pottery. Some people work
Hmm.
with are musicians, things like that. And one of the things that we sometimes talk about amongst ourselves is like, how do you find your people, so to speak? How do you find your tribe? How do you find people who are going to be drawn to your work? Because like if you go on Instagram and you post things, it's like a shotgun approach. Somebody might see it, somebody might not see it. But like what have you found helpful in your own journey to kind of find people, connect with people who are like-minded in terms of your art, people who can appreciate what you do and you can appreciate what they do. Like, how do you go about building that community?
Well, I think it's very different in this day and age than it was when I was starting out.
Hmm.
You got to realize, I started out 25 years ago. There was no, I mean, Instagram. We
Right.
didn't even have a smartphone. We were wandering around London with an A to Z. Let alone Google Maps. So it was a different world. It was a
Yeah.
different world. So, but what I think there's some sort of truisms that sort of underlie all of this, which is the first thing is like the work is the point. So you need the work. I really believe if you make the work and you put it out on whatever mechanism you've got, that's your best bet.
Yeah.
Use all the tools. I mean, how lucky to have Instagram now. I mean, people complain, but my gosh, you own the media.
Right.
That's a complete shift. There's no media owners. We are the media.
Yeah.
So with that comes the responsibility to use it. So, you put your work out and people, oh, can I have one? It reminds me of my childhood, etc. It's just that,
Mm.
you know, people who are into geeky emotional baggage drops in train stations found me because I did one. And the people who didn't like it and didn't get it probably didn't contact me.
Mm.
And you found my book, and now we're having a conversation
Yeah.
because I made a book.
Yeah.
Um, so I think making the work is it. I think
Yeah.
the what is it? The medium is the message. It kind of is like you make the work, and the right people will find it,
Mm.
and the wrong people won't be interested. They'll be
That's right.
blind to it, like it
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, I think it's easy to get so caught up in this day and age in trying to figure out like what's the best way to post something? What's the best
Oh
hashtags to
yeah.
use? What's the best place to go? And you start getting so caught up in like the
Right.
sharing of the thing that you made that it takes, for me, it can take the joy out of the actual making of the thing. And so
Oh,
for me, right, it's like it's pour everything I have into the making and then just put it out there and see where it goes. And sometimes
and
stuff that I think isn't going to go anywhere goes somewhere, and the stuff that I think is going to go somewhere goes nowhere.
yeah, I mean, the truth is, like, can you control it? Absolutely not. You
Yeah,
can't control it. You can control what you make. You can't ever control what people think about what you make
yeah,
or what happens to the thing you make. It's not your business. You're the artist. Make the thing. Leave all the rest of it to other people. Keep your head down, make work. That's the only advice I've got because you can't control it. There's a whole secondary economy of people teaching you how to promote yourself on Instagram and what to do and how to post it and what time and all the rest of it. The truth is nobody knows what that algorithm does.
yeah.
Like even the people at Meta don't really know.
Right. Even the people who made
Like
it don't
forget
know.
about it. Like it's cleverer than all of us. It's
Right.
designed to make well, whatever. I'm not going to go into it, but because there's an evilness to it, in my opinion.
Yes,
However, using it and making the most of it is not a bad thing. Just make sure the work, make the work interesting.
that's right. That's right. So good. Stuart, my friend, we're just about out of time, but this
All
has
right,
been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed our time together.
me
Thank you for
too.
making time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good
Definitely.
luck with the paintings.
Thank you. And real quick, where can people go if they want to find you and your work online? Any
Um,
websites you want to direct us to, social media?
yeah, so the best place is probably Instagram, Stuart Semple, StuartSemple on Instagram, or type my name into Google, you'll find me. And yeah, drop me a message. I normally write back if I'm not too busy. It'd be nice to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, cool. Thank
Awesome.
you.